Hello, Unravelers. It's Friday. We made it. I'm so proud of you, and I'm super happy that you're here hanging out with me. I haven't talked to you guys in a week. This week at work was crazy, but again, we made it through. So I'm proud of me too. This week, the official start of spooky season, at least for me, I try to wait till October 1st, although I posted, a spooky tale, a spooky true crime story like a week before October even got here. So I guess I was just anxious for this season, but it has arrived. So while I do have some cases on the books that I'm ready to talk about tonight, being that it's Friday and it was a long week, I kind of just wanted to settle in and tell a different kind of story, a spooky season story. This happened. This is real. This is real life. These are real victims. This is a real family. But it just kind of has that really chilling undertone. It's just, it reminds me of the movies that we watch, before Halloween. And for this one, we're going way, way, way back, over 100 years. Okay, yes, I know, but just go with me. So our story starts in a town called, I think I'm saying this right, Villisca, Iowa. And the year, like I said, is 1912. The month is June. And Villisca, Iowa was like the kind of, again, that really small town vibe. One of those towns that just felt like it was going to exist forever. It's just going to remain untouched for forever by all of the chaos of the world. At the time, it only had a population of about 2,000 people, and crime was just a thing that people read about in newspapers. Things, it was all stuff that happened far away from where they were. Neighbors all knew each other. Doors were left unlocked. That very picturesque, stereotypical small town vibe. That was Villisca, Iowa. At the heart of this community was a family known as the Moores. Joseph Moore, he was a very successful, very respected businessman in Villisca. Sarah Moore, his wife, she was a pillar of the church community, and together they were raising four very beautiful kids. And by all accounts, this family was living, 1912 American dream, just thriving. On the evening of June 9th, 1912, the entire family was present at their church for the annual Children's Day program. This was a happy, normal night. It was so normal that 10-year-old Catherine Moore invited her friends, Lena and Ina Stillinger, over to the Moore's house for a sleepover. So sometime that night, between 9:45 and 10 p.m., the Moore family and their two young guests walked the few blocks back to their home, stepped inside, and closed the door on that quiet Iowa night. They had no idea that something was waiting for them, something that had slipped in through one of those unlocked doors and was hiding patiently in the shadows of their own home. They didn't know that they had just had their last happy day. So, what do you guys think? Let's unravel. So the next morning at the Moore home, the sun rose on a home that was unnervingly still. A neighbor named Mary Peckham, she noticed that the chores weren't done, like the usual stuff, that the hustle and bustle that was always happening around the home, that stuff wasn't being done. The house was completely still. It was completely silent. And Miss Mary went next door because she became concerned. She said, this is so odd. I mean, at this time, there were 8 human beings in this home, but on any other given day, there were 6. Things were usually lively at the Moore home. She went over, she tried the door, and she found that it was locked. Really weird, right? We talked about that. Nobody locked their doors in Villisca. Villisca? I don't know if I'm saying that right, but just give me some grace. So when she found that the doors were locked, she called Josiah's brother. His name was Ross Moore, who let himself into the home with his own key that he had. He stepped inside. He called out. No answer, no sounds, no kids, no Josiah, no Sarah. So then he goes and opens the door to the downstairs guest room. What he saw when he opened that door sent him stumbling back out onto the porch, pale, shaking, terrified, telling the neighbor to call the marshal. His words would become the epitaph for this entire case. Quote, "Something terrible has happened here," unquote. Inside of that small home, 8 people were dead. Josiah and Sarah Moore, their 4 children, and the 2 visiting Stillinger sisters had all been bludgeoned to death in their beds with an axe. The Moore family killer was totally methodical here. He started upstairs. He started in the master bedroom with Josiah and Sarah. The attack on Josiah was particularly savage. He was struck an estimated 30 times with this axe. His face was unrecognizable. The killer then moved to the children's room and he killed Herman, Catherine, Arthur, and Paul as they slept. Finally, he went downstairs to that guest bedroom and he murdered 11-year-old Lena and 8-year-old Ina Stillinger. But this was not like just some crazy frenzied attack. This is where the story gets really chilling and really bizarre. The killer left behind a series of very strange, like ritualistic clues. Every mirror in the house was covered with a piece of cloth. The victims' faces were all covered with bed sheets or clothing after they were killed. There was a kerosene lamp that was found with its chimney removed, and the wick was bent so that it would cast only the faintest light. And on the floor of the downstairs bedroom, next to the bloody axe, the killer had left a 2 to 4 pound slab of raw bacon. Yeah, bacon. Then they found a bowl of bloody water in the kitchen, which, to me, of course, suggests that he had washed his hands. And then he locked the door behind him and he vanished. He vanished into the morning light. This was not just a murder. It was like a performance happening here. And the stage was about to be trampled by the entire town. So, okay, right now, this small town has one of the most brutal mass murders to occur so far in American history. What's the first thing you do? What do? You secure the crime scene, right? You collect all of the evidence. You start taking photos. Well, in Villisca, the town's operator put out an all call, basically telling everyone who was available, law enforcement wise, I'm assuming, to come down to the scene of the crime. And they did. Over 100 people traipsed through this home, contaminating absolutely everything. Don't get me wrong. I know it's 1912. I get it. But do we not have some sort of protocols in place when it comes to investigating murders of any magnitude, but murders of this magnitude, they handled the murder weapon. They were passing it around apparently like it was some fucking party favor. And some people, and I'm not making this up, some people took pieces of Josiah Moore's skull as souvenirs. Souvenirs. To make matters worse, forensic science in 1912, obviously, we know, was garbage. It was non existent. Okay. It's not their fault. Technology and whatnot. Fingerprinting, obviously, at this time was not a common practice. And when a local photographer showed up ready to document this terrible scene, officials turned him away, saying it was, quote, too ghoulish. Because, preserving the evidence of a massacre is just tacky. But 100 people playing past the axe, that's fine. This case was not just cold. It was frozen before the investigation could even begin, with no physical evidence to speak of, though you would think that there would be a ton of physical evidence. But the investigation then turned to the only thing that I had left: small town gossip, obviously. And in a small town that is rocked by tragedy, there's plenty of that to go around. The list of suspects starts to read like a game of Clue, Villisca edition. First up on the list of suspects, we have the powerful rival, State Senator Frank F. Jones. Josiah Moore used to work for Frank Jones before leaving to start a rival business. And he took the very lucrative John Deere franchise with him. And in a very juicy town rumor that Josiah was having an affair with Frank Jones's daughter-in-law, you've got a motive straight out of a soap opera here. The theory was that Jones hired a hitman who, they had a name for this man as well. His name was William Blackie Mansfield. The only problem, Mansfield had a rock solid alibi. He was in a completely different state at that time. So, oops, not the guy. Next, we have the crazed minister. You heard me, minister, Reverend George Kelly. Kelly was, in my research, a character. Okay, he was a traveling preacher. He had a very long history of mental illness and a penchant for peeping in windows. Yeah, he was in Villisca the night of the murders. He attended the same church service as the Moores, and he left town on an early morning train the following day. He became obsessed with this case, and get this, he even confessed. He claimed that God told him to, quote, slay utterly, unquote. Case closed, right? Not so fast. Not so fast, folks. He recanted almost immediately. He was like, just kidding, guys. Just kidding. That was a joke. That was a joke. He said that confession was coerced after hours of interrogation. He was tired. He was actually tried for this murder, for this massacre twice, but both trials ended in acquittal. And folks, the list just goes on here. It goes on and on and on. We had Andy Sawyer. He was a transient railroad. God, these double R words and my mouth just do not get along. Andy Sawyer was a transient railroad worker who was overheard muttering, quote, "I will cut your goddamn heads off," unquote, while practicing swings with his good old, you guessed it, axe. He also, though, had an airtight alibi. And then there was Henry Lee Moore. He was a convicted, go figure, axe murderer who killed his own mother and grandmother a few months later after this happened. But again, zero evidence placed him in Villisca. It seemed that every single lead just led to more dead ends here. But what if everyone was looking in the wrong place? What if the killer wasn't a neighbor with a grudge or, a local eccentric? What if he was just like passing through? In recent years, a very compelling theory has emerged that the Villisca murders were the work of one of America's first traveling serial killers. Do you guys know who I'm talking about? Do you? Criminologists talk very frequently about a killer's signature, right? It's not how they do the kill, but it's the ritualistic things that they do that they don't have to do. Things that kind of just fulfill some like dark psychological need. And when you look at other axe murders from that time period, a pretty terrifying pattern starts to emerge. A family killed in their beds in a small town near a near a railroad. The murder weapon, an axe belonging to the victim, left at the scene. The victim's faces covered. The lamp with the chimney removed, turned down very low. And most chillingly, the mirrors covered in cloth. This is a psychological fingerprint. They didn't have real fingerprint, actual forensic fingerprints. No, 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 no. But this was a psychological fingerprint. This is all pointing to one man leaving a trail of bodies across the country. And some researchers even have a name for this man, Paul Mueller, a suspect in a similar 1897 murder, who was last seen walking towards a train station before completely vanishing. So this theory actually suggests that the evil that visited Villisca that night was not born of small town feuds with senators or reverends. It was a phantom that rode the rails, an unseen monster who would step off the train, destroy a family, and then simply get back on the train and disappear into the night. The Villisca axe murders will actually very likely never be solved at this point. We're talking about 115 years? The contaminated, botched crime scene and the passage of time really has seen to that. The case file is actually closed, but the story that we tell about this case remains wide open. It's a very grim piece of American true crime folklore. Today, the house on East 2nd Street is actually a tourist attraction. You could take a tour and you can even spend a night if you're brave enough. I certainly would not. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and it's a monument to a tragedy that completely shattered a family and terrorized an entire town. But when you strip away, the ghost stories and the dark tourism, you're actually left with a very heartbreaking reality. 8 people, 6 of them children, went to sleep on a summer night in June of 1912, and they never woke up. That is just heartbreaking, no matter which way we slice it. Their lives were taken by this shadow of a person. And all that's left now is this story, this mystery, unsolved to this day. And it's just this very unquiet quiet that hangs over this very small town in Iowa still. So, what do you guys think happened that night? Have any of you guys even heard of this story before? Have any of you guys ever read about it? Do any of you guys have any theories about who could have done it? This one would actually be really fun to really deep dive into and start, getting into the actual but the problem is that so much of the evidence was destroyed. It was gone. Nowadays, I feel like this case would be, with everything that was left behind, this case we'd have solved in a minute. But as of now, and 100 and some odd years later. I'm really bad at math. Don't ask me. Don't ask me. You guys know. I mean, this is all we have. We have an unsolved mystery. We have a case that, I hear about and I read about, but there's still no answers. There's still no answers. But it's just spooky, right? It's spooky. It's like that unspoken fear. You walk into your own home and you think you're safe. You go to bed, um, and you're supposed to feel safe in your own home, and the Moore family that night was not safe in their own home. Thank you guys for hanging out with me and listening to this case. I'd love to hear from you guys, so leave me a like, leave me a share, leave me a comment. Let's get the channel to 1,000. Let's get it to 1,000. Babes, we're so close. But I'm actually going to end this one and get into the Houston Dinker sentencing that happened today. We're going to watch that together, you and me, babes, because, Karina Cooper and me, we go back. Not personally, but just, on the channel. Which was like my first big trial that I covered. So we're going to talk about that one literally tonight. So stay tuned if you want to. But yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I hope that everyone had a really great week. If you didn't, I'm sending you love and hugs and, all of the good things. And I will talk to you guys again really soon. I love you all so much. And until I see you again, please, please, please stay safe. Keep asking questions and keep unraveling. Love you.